Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. My name is Ben Jackson, and I'm back after a very long time. Feels like forever since I joined the podcast and actually spoke about Belgian football. Feels wrong to call myself the host anymore. Obviously, Scott has been here throughout that period, keeping things going, making things better. Who knows? We've had Antoine, we've had Joris, but neither of those two could join us, so it's back to just myself and Scott for this evening. Scott, long time no see. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, and I am not hosting this week. I'm along to help review the week in Belgian football with you. And I don't know about you, I've just been checking under my seat, actually, to see if Joris has left us any nasty surprises, get any ideas off the Charleroi Ultras, since he's not with us this week. If you haven't checked yours, I suggest you do so now before we get stuck into this.
I'm never entering a football stadium, especially in the away section again, without looking. If you haven't heard that story, we'll talk about it because it's absolutely mental. Yeah. And it's not the only mental story that came out of the second or the first division this weekend. There's plenty of stuff to talk about. And yes, Scott, you're no longer hosting. It's like kind of when you get a central midfielder that has to kind of slot in at centre back, and you can tell they just want to get forward. They want to express themselves a little bit more, but they've got to just kind of sit in deep and hold themselves back. But we've stuck you back in midfield, so you can be a box to box, roaming, free playing, free scoring midfielder on this week's episode. Quickly run through the results before we get into the action. Mechelen Dender, that finished 5-2 again, second time this season. Cercle against Beerschot finished 2-1. Lots to talk about in that one. Westerlo and Leuven drew 2 goals apiece. Union beat Genk 3-0. Antwerp came back a little bit. They lost to Club Brugge 3-2. Kortrijk beat St. Truiden 3-0. Massive ramifications for a lot of things in that game. Genk beat Anderlecht 2-1, and then the game we just kind of mentioned, Charleroi, they beat Standard Liège 1-0. Mechelen game, like I said, that's the second time this season it's finished 5-2 between these sides, but it's kind of like a role reversal of the other game, because the first game all the goals kind of happened at the end, and this one all the Mechelen goals just happened in the first half. And your favourite player scored a brace, Scott. Leon Lauerbach with a brace. Absolutely mental. Who'd have thought? I think when I saw that Rahman wasn't playing, I was slightly concerned for them in terms of scoring goals. But it's a strange one, isn't it? Because he doesn't always play. So you think Van Raffelgem's ahead of him in the pecking order. But when Rahman's not playing, he will just, multiple coaches will just stick with Lauerbach as the kind of starting striker. I've never really understood it. Like, if he's not good to come on enough to come off the bench, even he was behind in Goy at some points as well. So fair play to the lad. He needed that for his confidence, that's for sure. And that gives him 5 goals for the season. 5 goals he scored last season, so he might even blitz that. But he also scored 5 goals in the season before when he was in, I think, the second division in Germany. Yeah, for Eintracht Braunschweig. So maybe he's just a guaranteed 5 goals a season, man. But great win for Mechelen. With results kind of the way they are in that kind of playoff at the moment and how tight it was, any sort of win is just a massive boost for their chances of finishing top of that table, which I think out of all the clubs, I feel like they probably should. I think on paper they have more about them than most of the others, apart from maybe Charleroi.
It's interesting what happens when you change a coach sometimes, isn't it? I mean, looking at it now, obviously Fred van der Beest hasn't lost yet since he took over on what we still think is a temporary basis from Besnik Hazy after he was sacked. Although interesting as well, there have been some big developments out in Mechelen the last few days. Tim Matthijs, the sporting director, has been relieved of his duties, much to everyone's surprise. Nobody really saw this coming. I won't cry myself to sleep over this one, as Joris would say. I've been quite critical of a lot of his work. He has brought in a little bit of money, but I think with the money's come in, I think when you look at it, I think he's got a little bit lucky, which you have to do sometimes. Far more misses for me than hits. So I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing for the club, providing the replacement is an improvement, obviously. I just wonder on that particular issue, on the sporting director issue, who is the more ambitious of the two? Was it Tim Matthijs, or is it the club's hierarchy? There's obviously been a disagreement somewhere that's major enough for him to be sacked, which has now happened. So we'll see what happens there. Good performance from them. here. Second time this season, this game's actually finished 5-2 as well, which is really interesting. And we'll see where it goes from there. I think if you look at everything else that's been happening, I think the players feel much better about themselves as well. So I think there is definitely something in this whole thing about the atmosphere under Besnik Kazi. Not that it's necessarily down exclusively to him, but I think the atmosphere had been heading south for a while in his final few weeks, and certainly affecting performances, and everybody looks lighter. When Mechelen play well, they do have goals in them, even if they don't necessarily have the best strikers in the world at the moment. They've had better, but I did feel coming into the playoffs that they had as good a chance as anybody of winning this playoff and securing a European place. I don't see this being any different, and they've got themselves in a good position. It's going to be tight. Charleroi are going to push them probably quite hard now, I think, and others will still have something to say about this, but it's kind of in their own hands. And it's looking kind of, the memory of Besnik Kazi is looking like exactly that, a memory. He's gone to Brussels now, hasn't started that well there, is looking a bit frustrated. It's funny what happens when you make a few little changes like that. On Dender, they were just really poor. Just not ready for this game at all, sitting far too deep for most of the game, too much space between the defence and the midfield, couldn't get anything going at all. And from very early on, because they started poorly, you thought, I really fear for them here. And it was definitely one of those games where you thought this could be as many as Mechelen wanted. I was watching it when they scored their fifth. I was wondering whether there was going to be a sixth or more, because Mechelen haven't scored six for 13 years. I think it was back in 2012. I checked this just in case they did it, which they didn't. But yeah, it was 13 years ago in the Belgian Cup. They won 6-0 at home. So yeah, they nearly managed to smash another record of theirs, and they probably should have with the chances they had in this game. But yeah, big shot in the arm for them at an important stage of the season.
Yeah, and I think for Dender, it's just whatever now. Doesn't matter. Like you've kind of done your job, haven't you? You've stayed in the league, and I think they need to start thinking seriously about the summer. And I'm sure they are. Like, I'm not saying this as if they're kind of just sat twiddling their thumbs. I reckon they are fully planning how they're going to build upon this success and how they're going to get a squad together for next year that can match this, because I think they've probably realised that they just about got enough out of this team, but I don't think you could take this team into the next season and get the same result. I think they do need to make some improvements, which, yeah, I'm sure they will. You mentioned Besnik Kazi. He almost was in charge of this other game that we're going to go to next, the Cercle Brugge game, and I think, yeah, me and you were probably on exactly the same wavelength here, Scott, when we were watching this. We're just thinking, Cercle having far too many chances to only be winning 1-0. You're just dicing with it at the moment, even if Brugge aren't that great. Thibaut Sommers with the second 2 goals in 2 games now. We've got to talk about the initial save, though, from Davor Matias. What a save that was. And he had a fantastic game, actually. He was really good in between the sticks. And that's ironic because Brugge have had, like, Shinton's been pretty good, and then Matias has come in and he's been pretty good as well. Like, I think he's kind of shown himself. So, yeah, I was thinking the other day, like, what players from Brugge would you keep in the Pro League? And it's probably just the goalkeepers. And there's not actually that enough spots for them to kind of stay in the league. So I think they'll probably have to go as well. Like Matias probably go back to Croatia or something, get a job there, because, yeah, he was really, really good. So Huffy did hit the bar, so it was like a warning sign. And then obviously Delanga makes a mistake and you're thinking, you can't afford to not win this game, conceding the 86th minute. Like, I was thinking this is disaster mode, like for Cercle. This is like the worst possible result. And then they nick it at the end with that Perrin goal. You could see the relief in the stands in the stadium. And I think now that Brugge are down, it's going to be like this with every single game that they play. All those teams are like, we just have to win that game. Like, you cannot afford to drop points against them in this kind of relegation playoff, because the ramifications of that are just so big. And for Cercle, the way the kind of results have gone, they obviously play St. Truiden next. If they can win one of those and draw one of those, I think they should be pretty much done. They should be safe. And I think it'll just be a big sigh of relief when it in that half of Bruges and be like, right, okay, let's get ready for next season. Let's make sure we're back fighting for kind of European football, back kind of nearer the top, because they know that things haven't gone well this year, and they know that they need to improve in terms of the recruitment that they're going to make in the summer, and I think they will. And I know you quite liked what you saw from Steven Gura. This is the first time I felt I really watched him. I was like, there's definitely a player there. There's something about him. Like he probably could have had a goal or two in this game, but I'm like, Denki started slowly, so there's no harm in starting slowly. You've had this kind of first couple of months to get ready, come back in the next season, hit the ground running. He could be a player to watch for sure if they can stay in the league. But I don't know, there's something about seeing Thibaut Sommers as the kind of guy scoring the goals, isn't there? The captain, the Cercle man, like through and through. He is that club, and having players like him in the team is kind of what you need at this stage of the season to kind of galvanise things. And it's something that some of the other teams down there don't actually have, is that kind of guy that's come up through the system and is part and parcel of kind of the makeup of the club. So a relieving win, I guess we can say, for Cercle. Whereas for Beerschot, like, at least if you're putting in performances and you're planning to be spoilers, like that's all we can ask for. They could have easily packed it in and gone on holiday like months ago.
Yeah, I'll say that much for Beerschot, actually. Do you know what I mean? They're digging in for their dignity and self-respect as much as possible, which in itself is quite unusual, because normally any club, doesn't matter what league you're in their situation, they've chucked it by now. Once it's officially kind of done, and it kind of becomes a free for all really for whoever you're playing. But they're not. They're out there and they're fighting for one another still, and there's a lot to be said for that actually. Regardless of the fact there's nothing to play for anymore in terms of their status, but their self-respect will remain intact a little bit longer. Cercle just seemed determined to kind of do this the hard way. It looked like they were going to drop points yet again. Obviously did it last week against Kortrijk. Couldn't see the game out. And again, I come back to that game against Standard, that home fixture they had a number of weeks ago now, where they were 1-0 up, conceded, I think it was the 98th, 99th minute, something like that. And those 2 points that they dropped that weekend, if they hadn't dropped those, they wouldn't be in the situation they're in now. So the margins this year have just been unbelievable. They're creating enough chances to win games still. They just don't have somebody who goes, I'm going to have this, whether it's a striker or somebody else. Just somebody who can get, I don't know, something in the region of 12 goals a season. You know what I mean? It's just, no one's remotely near that. You mentioned Thibaut Sommers there, who you can always rely to step up and get you a goal occasionally, and he's trying his best to haul everybody along behind him. Big leader, huge figure inside the club. Really, really important to them. Really nice guy as well, by the way, everybody. Really shy. Not on the pitch. You would never know it if you watch him on the pitch. Thibaut can put himself about and handle himself, but off the pitch, he's a really quiet, unassuming guy. He's one of those players who flicks a switch as soon as he crosses that line, obviously. But yeah, great leader, great personality. I think, interestingly, something's happened over the last few days. I think, Cercle getting that win, and Perrin's late winner met with tears at the end. He was greeting, as they say in Scotland, where I'm from, with the sheer relief of the whole thing. I wasn't sure whether it was tears of joy, but I don't think it was. I think he was absolutely kind of, he was gutted. He had nothing left in the tank after that, but couldn't quite believe it. Again, such are the margins. But I think with them getting that win this weekend, and St Truden not winning, and a lot of intrigue going on inside there that's ongoing, developing right now as we speak. We'll get to that shortly. Big story going down there, which we'll almost certainly come back to on next week's episode as well, because it looks like there's change coming there. The psychology of all this has shifted. It always looked like it was going to be between Cercle and St Truden to see who was going to stay up outright, win that playoff, and who was going to end up in the playoff final. But I think with St Truden's performance this weekend and the jitters and nerves really setting in there's a bit of panic for a number of reasons going on in there. they look like they're about to make a change on the cusp of this huge doubleheader between Cercle and St Truiden, which carries massive risk to it. And I think that favours Cercle. Doesn't mean you're necessarily going to get the result you want, but I do think it favours them. And I agree with you. I think if Cercle can beat St Truiden this weekend, I think it's going to be extremely difficult whether St Truiden make the change or not. In the dugout to kind of catch them. So that game is a cup final in its own right now.
Yeah. Is it bad to say that after all these years of us moaning about the playoffs, I'm actually really enjoying them and I don't want them to go away? This is great. I've finally reached it. Like, we're getting rid of them. What we did, bring them back. Although the second playoff, like last year, that was a farce. I'm trying to remind myself of how pointless loads of those games were. Yeah. Leuven, were they involved in those? Yes, they were. There's just so many of these pointless games, and they obviously, like I just said at the beginning, they drew 2-2 with Westerlo, 2-0 up, and then draw 2-2. A result that just doesn't help either team. You know, when you're just looking at that, you're like, that is, for Mechelen, that is the perfect result. And for Charleroi winning as well, perfect result. If you win your games and these other teams are drawing their games, this is just ideal situation. Interestingly, though, I don't know if you clocked it as well, but like looking, I think Coleman's kind of just saying, like, you know, I'm going to start just kind of playing different people, try and mix it up a bit. Like, let's see who I want to have in the team this week, because Benzouzi's obviously he's going. That was announced today. He's going to RB Leipzig. I think a fee in the region of like 16 million euros, so a decent return on the small amount. I think they only paid well under 2 million for him. So lovely return on him. Great player. I think he's going to do well. Season, he's at 2030. Him and Arthur Ramirin in central midfield together is quite a funny thing to think about. So he's given Walter George a couple more matches in recent weeks. He's giving him a little bit of a chance. Maziz came back in for a start. Niakosi came in for a start as well. I can't remember if this was his first start, wasn't it? First game, scored a goal. Not a bad return. Show the strikers how it's done. So I think that's kind of, I think Chris is outwardly probably, he will keep saying that they can make it into that top spot, but I think he knows the quality's not there. And I think he's thinking, right, let's just give all these players a little run. Let's mix it up a bit and let's see, like, who do I want to go into next season with? Because I think he's going to come in, and now that they've just got that money, and he can be like, look, you need to give me a player in this position, this position, this position. This is what I need. These guys are good. These guys you need to get rid of. It'll be another turnover summer for them for sure. I think the same needs to happen at Westerlo, to be honest. I think there's probably a bunch of players that they need to kind of move on from, a bunch of players they need to kind of mix up and switch around. But yeah, like I said, a result that doesn't really help either side. It was looking good for Leuven. If they'd got that win, you could kind of think, okay, maybe they can sneak it, but this classic kind of them and classic kind of Westerlo as well. Like, it kind of a game that sums up both sides, really.
Well, I think the draw was absolutely a fair result. When you look at the detail of the game and you pick it apart a bit, I think Leuven's slightly the better of the two sides, but a draw, not an unfair result. Interestingly, Banzuzi going to RB Leipzig to join Vermeeren in that midfield. Obviously, Apenda's still there. You know, there's a very interesting Belgian contingent of current and yesteryear there as well, and of course the Alexander Blesson, no stranger to Belgian football, is being extremely heavily linked with a switch to RB Leipzig at the moment as well. So it could be that Belgian reunion could be coming even stronger. I think Leuven have been holding out. They'd had a number of offers that were on the verge of being accepted. It looked at one point like he was going to England. That deal appeared to be almost done. The English media jumped the gun a little bit and assumed that it was done, when in fact it was never actually done at all. So much so that I think was that West Ham. I think it was something like West Ham, somebody like that. Anyway, I started to get inquiries from podcasts and some other media requests to talk about that. To which I replied to all of them, "This isn't done yet. Let's wait till it's done." And of course, it never did get done. So yeah, don't jump the gun. certainly with things like that. I'm glad I didn't waste my time in putting in all that effort and analysis and research to those recordings that would never have seen the light of day. Fair result. And again, like you say, I think the thing is, if you're Mechelen, you're looking at that and go, I'll chomp that result up every day. Every point dropped by the other sides is a point gained if you're leading the pack there. Although there's a lot of football still to be played in that playoff, without a shadow of a doubt. But yeah, not too much really more to say about this game. I actually thought Leuven played on the whole quite well this week. Probably had something to do with the fact that the pressure has obviously been lifted now. Yes, they have something to play for, but that fear of dropping into the relegation playoff, with that being lifted, people can play a bit more freely. And I thought there were a lot of pretty solid performances there this weekend. So they've got something to work from. And yeah, on the Coleman thing, I think we will see hopefully a different Leuven next year. How different, we don't know yet. But that clean slate, I think, and getting the benefit of having a few months to know these players and the league, because Chris was very honest enough to say up until quite recently that he was still getting to know the league and the players, and to acclimatise himself to tactically, I think, what works and what doesn't work in Belgium, regardless of who you are, is taking its time for him. But he will benefit from that, and be able to put all those benefits back into the team, you would hope, with a decent summer of recruitment.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the Chris Coleman Leuven from next year, and to kind of judge him based on that for sure. Let's go to playoff one, and I've been thinking of this analogy ever since about Sunday at 9:00 in the morning, because I decided, I'm gonna watch every Belgian's probably favourite sport, or kind of on par with football favourite sport, and a bit of cycling. Ronde van Vlaanderen, big one of the season, obviously. You're going into it and they're like, look, there's three, all the pundits saying there's three guys that you think can win this. There's Tadej Pogacar, obviously. There's Mathieu van der Poel. Obviously, he had to fight out the other day. And then Mads Pedersen. They were kind of like, these are your top three. And I was like, well, this is just like the Pro League, isn't it? We've got all these other riders, and they kind of said, this guy could win, this guy could win, this guy could win. And it's like, this is how we came into playoff one, isn't it? Like, Anderlecht there, they could still win the league, or Antwerp could still win the league, or Genk, they could still win the league, but it's only ever going to be about these three. And those three for us are obviously Genk, Club, and Union. I think Club, I'm giving them the Tadej Pogacar kind of status of they've been there, they win everything. Like, you can kind of think they're going to do it. I gave Genk the Van der Poel because I'm like, yeah, you can see kind of maybe they can power their way to a win every now and then. And then Pedersen, I went to Union because he's kind of like your hipster bet and your hipster kind of outside bet. So that's kind of how I'm splitting this up. So we'll start with Pedersen's Union. They just beat Ghent. I think you've probably got some stats on this, Scott, about since a certain man took over at Ghent, and kind of how the permanent decision making has kind of gone a little bit sideways. That's safe to say. But yeah, Union winning 3-0. Those 3 goals in the space of about 9 minutes. Wanted to give a shout out to Anwar El Hajj. Actually, I think he's a player we've kind of seen how his career's kind of gone up and down since we've been on the podcast. We spoke very highly of him during kind of his breakout year with Anderlecht. Didn't really work. Went to Genk, had a couple of moments at Genk. He went to Union and he was getting DMPs, sitting on the bench for a lot of this season. He's come in now. Sofiane Boufal's injury has given him a lot more space to operate. 4 goals, 4 assists. I think, if I remember rightly, most of those goals and assists have all come basically in the last 5 games. So before that, he had 1 goal, 1 assist, and then he scores an assist against Dendo on the 1st of March, gets another goal, 2 more assists, and another goal. So like he's really putting together a really nice, solid bit of form. And you forget he's still only 22. So it's really nice to see him playing well. He's a player I've quite liked. The rest of that team, like you get those front 3 scoring, and I think they're in such good form at the moment with David and Ivanovic. And people have been messaging us this week saying that we said about how there was that divide weeks ago between the top 3 and the rest of them, and it's just the players are really a microcosm of it this year, more so than I think in past years. I think the gulf has felt a lot bigger. And it's not surprising, but it is surprising at the same time, because I think if you'd gone into the season, we thought Anderlecht should be able to compete with these guys, but they had a terrible summer that ruined it. Ghent, financially, they have the money to do it, but they didn't. Antwerp, them I'm fine. Like, them not being able to compete with these top three, I think is completely understandable. They were in that transition period. But yeah, a great win for Union. They've got, next week's could be a really, really good weekend for them because of club against Genk, and they play Anderlecht. If they can stick a win in there, they can really kind of claw back a result if those two sides draw. Like, I think if club win, it's probably better for Union because then they can really put the pressure on. So yeah, another good win for them, getting the job done. Don't drop points against the other three. I think is kind of the way that you have to approach these playoffs if you're those top guys.
Yeah, well, I think it's fair to say Union are really enjoying the hunt at the moment. It's no surprise that it suits them, I think, doing it that way than the way they've been used to doing it in recent years, where they've been hunted by the others. And it'll be really interesting to see ultimately where things finish up at the end of the season as well, with the psychology, all of that being shifted. They've started the playoffs really, really well. Scored 8 goals over the first 2 games as well, and psychologically they've obviously adjusted things. Sebastian Pocagnoli was talking about coming into these playoffs, much like Torsten Fink was, about having things right mentally. It's an entirely different kind of game. Those 10 games, in terms of how you approach them. Of course, they lost against Genk in that last game of the regular season, where they could have closed the gap a little bit more coming into the playoffs, and that did raise a few question marks about, well, are they truly ready? And I think Pocagnoli kind of underlined that and said, look, this just kind of goes to show that actually there is work still to be done, and they're doing that. They're making life as difficult as they can for club and Genk at the moment. Those 3 goals in a 10-minute spell kind of killing Ghent. Ghent, by the way, still haven't beaten Union since Union came back to the top flight now. So a proper bogey team for them. That's 9 times they've failed to beat them so far. And yes, I do have a stat on Daniel Milicevic that's just slightly amusing, not massively insightful, but it is amusing. Since he was confirmed as the permanent T1 at the end of March, I think it was the 23rd or the 24th of March, they've lost twice. They've conceded 7 without scoring. So they haven't scored a goal since he got the job on a permanent basis. And my first reaction, I'll just tell everybody right now, my first reaction when it was announced was, first of all, I wasn't surprised particularly because it had been rumbling on for so long. I thought, they've asked lots of people, they've talked to lots of people, they've had a lot of no's. It's probably going to be Milicevic, and fair play to him. You know what I mean? I think he kind of does deserve a shot. My other response was they really should have waited until the end of the season, the end of the playoffs, to see how that went, because as I was just saying, it's an entirely different thing psychologically, and I think if he could have done reasonably well across the playoffs, and obviously there's still 8 games to go as of now, their form could turn round a fair bit. Then you would absolutely kind of, you could get behind that appointment. But as is so often the way, I think sometimes decisions are made at the wrong point. And I do question it a little bit. I think there was no reason why they couldn't have waited, even if they'd had a lot of no's, because we know that over the summer there's probably going to be change at other clubs as well. So, why commit yourself to something now when, there's absolutely no real reason for you to do that? It's a little bit odd, to say the least. But yeah, things haven't started very well for him as the permanent T1. But we've seen that with a number of coaches. Exactly the same things happen with other people, where, Uber's a good example. He was doing, reasonably okay-ish before it became permanent, and then it just kind of went off a bit of a cliff for him. Daniel will be hoping it isn't, the same in his case. But Ghent are just, as we've been highlighting for not just weeks, but probably months, just don't really feel like a playoff side one at the moment yet. They've managed to get themselves in there, which in itself is an achievement, considering how inconsistent their season's been. They've got to look at that and go, well, the season's been a success regardless. There's no doubt about that for me. But I just feel like there's a lot of work to be done there for them to be able to repeat that next year. and to hopefully maybe make an actual impact, because much like Anderlecht and Antwerp, as you were saying, we've got this really two-tier thing going on where those three clubs have really struggled with consistency throughout the entire season, and are still doing so now. And just seem, way behind kind of the top three. Joris was keen to point out last week that we have to be careful that this isn't just, confirmation bias, which I think is a fair point. But I think as each week goes by, I think what is being confirmed is what we initially suspected now. I can go to bed tonight being reasonably confident that I think that there's little room for doubt now that, there's a big gap between the top three in terms of what they're capable of when they're at their best, and these other three sides. I think the Antwerp we're seeing at the moment is the Antwerp that I thought we might see at the start of the season, just this club that really doesn't seem to have any direction or know what it's doing at the moment, and they've just appear to have chucked it. There's a lot of players there who will be leaving and probably not there next season. Ulderink is almost certainly not going to be there as well. So you have players knowing that the coaching staff's going to be changing as well. And just I think their attitude and mentality is not really in the right place, despite them putting up a reasonably spirited fight against Club this weekend, but still losing fairly convincingly in the end.
Oh, you just segued perfectly. I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head there, Scott, that those three clubs, actually, Ghent, Antwerp and Anderlecht, are all directionless at the moment, because we don't know who their head coach is going to be next season. We don't know what the playing staff situation is going to be. And when you look at Genk, you're like, Torsten Fink, he's going to be there apparently forever because he's got a contract whenever he wants it. Nicky Hayen, there's no reason I don't think they were ever going to get rid of him unless it had been an absolute disaster of a season. It's obviously not. Pocagnoli's he's proven himself over the year, and I kind of have to hold my hands up and say I wasn't convinced after a month, and he's completely proven me wrong. But each of those three guys, I feel like they as well as coaches are kind of a tier. They've proven themselves to be kind of a tier above these other three. Like Hazy coming in, like he was struggling at Mechelen. Why is he going to do it at Anderlecht? Do you know what I mean? Like weird decision. Antwerp as well. I still think Duroc was harshly sacked. I think he'd done what he should have done, which is get them into the top six. And then Ghent, I think with Ghent is what's happened is they probably all the players were like playing for him because they're like, well, he's not going to be here forever. He's doing a fine. Like we'll stick with him. And then suddenly he is the permanent coach. So like, you actually are just going to stay with him. You're not getting Gerritsen. You're not getting someone else in. Like. What? Yeah. Like, I don't want to be here now. I don't think this guy's a great coach, but I'm like, do you know what I mean? Like, it must change the player psychology as well. And like, it's just one of those things. Let's go to the Tadej Pogacar of my analogy of the Ronde, which is Club Brugge against Antwerp. And I was like, who do I want to put Antwerp as? So I've given them the Jasper Stuyven because they can win a classic, they can win a race every now and then, like they can win a cup, they can win the league, but you're not banking on them to do it every single time. They were 3-0 down by half-time in this one, and I was like, flipping heck. First goal, though, what a move. Like, this is free-flowing football from Club. Really, really lovely finish from Ukler. Janssen and Balikwisha score, probably two of their kind of key players with some quality as well, actually, that you can kind of bank on. And I was thinking, like, if Janssen's not there next year, I'd be very, very concerned about what direction they're going to go in terms of a striker, because they have been so reliant on him for goals and assists. I think he's had a pretty strong season. Balikwisha, he has come back at the perfect time to get that move to Celtic, so that's obviously going to happen now that he's back and scoring some goals. So he'll be much closer to you by next summer, Scott. That's for sure. But yeah, interesting that it feels like it does kind of flatter them that they got back into this game. But it's good to show, again, it's good to show that they are trying to compete and they're trying to show some heart and fight and stuff. And I reckon the entire Genk Union fan base was willing them to get that third, like desperate for them to get that third. But unfortunately for them, they didn't. Club remain the second placed team in the group. And yeah, they had to win that one because it sets up that home clash with Genk next week. And I feel like, I can't wait for that game. That is just going to be, the atmosphere at the Ambrido is going to be phenomenal. It's going to be so good. Not just from the home fans, the Genkies will travel really, really well for that as well. I think, it's going to feel like a cup final. And thankfully, this result kind of makes it so. And that's kind of how I see the title race going. It's kind of, I want it to finish in a way that they all beat these other three teams because they are better than them. It's the games against each other that really decide the title, and I think that's going to be the best way for it to happen. And I hope that is how it happens. But yeah, great first goal, great couple of goals from them. It's really setting up next week perfectly.
You mentioned Ferran Ugla there and his goal, which was good. You're dead right. I think he's had a really decent season actually, without anybody really particularly talking about him. He's one of those players that I think a lot of people have forgot about. But even when he hasn't been scoring, I think he has been playing kind of quite well on the whole. You know, his link-up play's been good. He's been getting into good positions. But a bit of an unsung hero for club in some respects this season. Somebody that, a forgotten figure. You know, everyone raves about, Yashari, for example, who deserves to be raved about. Actually, I think he's one of the players actually this season who's impressed me the most. An all-round beast of a player, I think. You know, I think he has a potentially quite a big move ahead of him. At some point soon as well. Certainly, if he kind of continues the form that he's on, there's a lot of people watching him at the moment, and he's been a bit of a revelation. There's some other players inside that club squad, incidentally, who I think they're going to try and cut loose this summer and get what they can for them. Skoras is one who's been obviously a massive disappointment. He's probably going to be heading out as well. Not really in the picture anymore, and I think we might see a slight re-energising of that midfield over the summer. Very, very easy. Slim pickings from in the first half. The game was done quickly, and I think they were slightly terrified by how easy it was. I mean, it was interesting. Afterwards, Hans van Aken was saying he was quite nervous in the second half because he wasn't expecting it to be such a rollover for them. And when Antwerp did step up a little bit and try and have a go, you know, it's funny again, it's the psychology thing. It's, you know, games pivot on sometimes quite insignificant things. And even Nicky Hine afterwards said he said it felt more like a 3-3 game, or it was going to head that way, that it was maybe going to end, say, 4-2. So I think it did start to play on club psychology and their nerves in the end. But yeah, they've got the win, which is the most important thing for them, and they've set themselves up nicely for the visit of Genk. Genk don't have a great record at the Jan Breidel this season. They've lost every time they've gone there, including in the cup as well. Obviously, club beat them in the cup semi-final. Although the Genkies can't hold on to the fact that they did win at home earlier in the season against club, so they can do it. And there's this interesting kind of dynamic set up now between these two. Club have obviously got the experience, they've been there before, they've done it, they know what they're doing. The Genk squad is younger, but it is the most consistent side. It's top of the table. Can they do it, and can they hold their nerve? Because that's really what it's going to come down to. Whether they can hold their nerve over these key games, of which obviously this is the first one. And again, the psychology. We're talking a lot about psychology this week. The psychology of this particular fixture at this particular moment is really interesting, I think, as well. And the thing that's impressed me most about Genk, we've said this, all three of us, I think probably me more than anybody else, I really like the way they think through problems in games. They just find solutions. Arioris probably won't forgive us if we don't point out, he said he felt that his side got away with one a little bit against Anderlecht this week. And although that's true, I think they did work their way through it. And that's been really impressive. There's been a lot of rotation. There's a lot of depth in that squad. And even when Fink has been rotating, it hasn't affected the quality either. So there's not a lot to be critical of them really anywhere. There's just that question mark of how they're going to handle these big games, and I think this weekend will go a long way to telling us that. Obviously, Anderlecht are playing Union in the big Brussels derby at the Marion. And Union will be desperately hoping not only to get a win, they need to look after themselves first of all, but they will be really, really hoping for a draw in this fixture as well, because if they can get the win and that finishes all square at the Jan Breidel, then things do become proper squeaky.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think I just look at it and you think that club have the players that have played in all these big games, and they've had this big game experience, and it's that Genk team has so many youngsters in it and players that haven't played at this kind of in this sort of like cauldron, I guess you could say, of where the pressure is really, really on. Like you're going to have Penders in goal, like just a youngster, and you're going to have to look to Brian Hain, and he's got to kind of just like be like, I've played in these sort of games, I've got the experience, I'm the kind of the senior player. I could see Hozowski starting for them. I could see Fink saying maybe we start Hozowski, maybe we go with that slightly more experience. So I say that, and then I think Koretsas, I don't think he really cares. Do you know what I mean? I don't think he really notices anything like this. I feel like he's so young and he's so free and he's so kind of like will just get down and play. I think he's the sort of player that you don't worry about. It's the players that are kind of maybe a little bit older but still young, like who've had a bit of experience and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, obviously, actually, Joris Kembe as well. I should probably mention him. I think he's a player that can kind of say, "Look, I've been around. I've been in this league long enough to know I can be a kind of leader in this as well." So yeah, I'm buzzing for that game. I'm glad Genk beat Anderlecht. No offense to Anderlecht fans, and I'm glad Elowadi scored an absolute rocket to win the game.
Oof.
We may as
Oof.
well speak a little bit about this game now while we're on it, and then we can jump back to St. Trude and Kortrijk. But yeah, it was fantastic. Got two really good goals, actually. The Kempe goal was really good as well. And he hasn't really scored many. But yeah, it was just one of those that, like, when I saw the ball bounce in front of Elowadi, I was like, please hit that. And he did. And it's just like, Kuzma's had no chance. There's no way he's stopping that. And even if he did, it'd probably taken him into the back of the net. So yeah, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else on this one, Scott. Because I know you just kind of mentioned a fair amount about it, but yeah, what a goal and what a way to a goal deserving of winning any sort of game, in my opinion.
Yeah, you don't score too many like that. You remember those finishes just because they're hit too so sweetly. And yeah, I mean, I think that result was kind of great for a title race as well, and probably the one I was kind of hoping for ultimately to kind of keep it interesting. Just on Anderlecht, kind of specifically, I think although they were better this week, after the complete non match at the Jan Bridal against Club, I think they were just too not strong enough. I think. And obviously not enough quality in depth. And obviously they have, more importantly, they don't have that thing that Genk have, and that's ability to work around their problems. And just as a unit, they don't function in nearly the same way. I think there was a hope when Besnik Hazi came in. Obviously, he would add grit because he's got a bit of a reputation for doing that. We didn't see any of that against Club, and we didn't see that much more this week either. I think there's a lot of work to be done there, and I think they, as a club, are quite nervous about the upcoming cup final because there's a lot of pressure. I don't care what anyone says on them in terms of obviously winning that cup. And everything that means to the club, so they can say that there's some progress. But yeah, Genk, despite not being at their best, producing real moments of quality to win the games, and that's what it's about. And with a squad as young as this, it's developing as fast as this, it's hugely impressive to see it. And there's been no indication, to me anyway, that now that we've hit the playoffs, the psychology of things has changed, that's affected them particularly, which makes this weekend's game against Club particularly exciting to see whether they can go to the Jan Bridal and get anything, because I was saying it's not been a particularly happy visit for them throughout the regular season or in the Cup. So that's something to watch out for this weekend. But yeah, I mean, things are kind of set up kind of quite nicely there, especially in light of the big Brussels derby as well. You know, things could be considerably tighter depending on the way things go coming out of this weekend.
Yeah, so it's all kind of set up, isn't it? I guess for that next week clash and an Anderlecht against Union, it's going to be a great weekend. And then Ghent against Antwerp is kind of like filler game. It's kind of there to like, I don't know, keep people occupied for that 90 minutes of that part of the weekend. Who knows? I think we've kind of got to go to the the elephant in the room, or the Lasada in the room if you're Felice Mazu at this moment in time. Like, what is going on at St. Trude? And beat Beerschot 1-0. Like, okay, fine. Like, it was a struggle, but they got there. They got the win. They face Kortrijk, and I'm like, they'll be fine. They'll win. They're at home. They'll be fine. I can't remember where I was. I think I was out somewhere. I look at my phone and I'm like 3-0 to Kortrijk, and I saw your messages coming through. Like, I was like, what is going on? Like, what has happened over there? Is Bernd Storck the greatest manager that's ever walked the earth? He clearly is. He's much better than your Pep Guardiolas and your Sir Alex Fergusons and your whatnots. It's Bernd Storck, ladies and gentlemen. He is the greatest. Even with having to substitute his keeper after an hour and bring on a teenager, 19-year-old, doesn't matter. It's Bernd Storck. They'll still come out on fine, still keep a clean sheet. Kadri, goal, assist. Like, he is the talisman. I wrote an article actually for Get Football this week saying that man he basically, to sum it up, he should not be in Belgium playing for Kortrijk next season. He should be playing for anyone other than Kortrijk, a top 6 side in Belgium or somewhere else in one of the higher leagues for sure. That man's just far too good for this level. But it is absolutely put the cat amongst the pigeons, giving them. They've got the ips. They've got the ick with Mazu. They've got everything. They're absolutely just off on one at the moment, aren't they? They've spoken to like loads of people from what the report in Het Nieuwsblad have said, and I know you've obviously then gone and checked with some people, Scott, to see kind of like what the actual detail is, and it is they've spoken to quite a few people, a couple of names that you're like, there's no way they were ever going to get that person to come in and take over with this. Like, Franken was one of them. What was Franken going to do? He's not going to come to St. Truden at this situation, is he? It's just bizarre. It's so disrespectful to Mazu, in my opinion. I think he deserves a little bit more respect than that. Just sack him if you don't want him to be there. Do you know what I mean? And then just do it properly. Don't speak to people and then they hinted, oh, well, he's going to have to stay because we can't get anyone. But they've suddenly found someone. It looks like today it's being strongly reported that Hernan Lasada is the man they want. A little bit of talk about how it's a little bit of Lamkelzee involved, which I think is a crazy, crazy way to make a decision about a head coach, is to go with who you Lamkelzee back, because we all know that doesn't work for a very long period of time. It doesn't matter who you've got in charge. Even if Lamkelzee was in charge of Lamkelzee would fall out with Lamkelzee. Like, the man he just falls out with everyone. But yeah, I don't know. Like, we can speak a little bit about the game, but I feel like the fallout from the game is a little bit more important than the game itself. Obviously, the ramifications are that Kortrijk are now 4 points behind St. Truden, and they play Beerschot. I believe it's back-to-back games against Beerschot, while St. Truden have to play Cercle back-to-back. And that's why we're talking about, if Cercle can go unbeaten, they can win one and draw one, and Kortrijk beat Beerschot both times, like, Bernd Storck is keeping that team in the division. Like, I think they've got the better manager at that point. And I'm a Hernan Lasada fan. You're a Hernan Lasada fan, Scott. Like, we are both Hernan Lasada fans. But he is not the manager I want coming into my club in this situation. Like, I want Hernan Lasada before. I want him in the summer where he's got pre-season to work through the kind of gung-ho, fun, attacking style of play that he brings to a club. And he does bring that to a club, and he's a really fun manager. But we know that defensively his teams aren't great. And this side just conceded 3 to Kortrijk. Like, what are we doing here? Is he really I feel like they just like, we just want to get rid of Mazu. We need to make a decision. We're going to go in Lasada. It's also kind of like, this isn't the reasoning, and this is just me kind of projecting this kind of opinion onto it. If they go down, at least they've got a man with experience in 1B, and I think he'd bring them straight back up. Like, I have no doubt he'd bring them straight back up, and he'd give them the summer if he kept a couple of those players. But it just seems like a crazy decision to make at this time, and you're better off going. You need, like, the problem is the managers you'd go to that would kind of, you'd think, keep you up like a store can't on the market. So this is where you're going, and it just seems like the decision making at that club's just been a little bit odd for the whole year. Like, Fink leaving, it felt they never had a plan for that. And it's like, how did you never think that was going to be possible? Halfway through last season, you should have thought, this man's really good. He's doing really well with us. We need a succession plan now. They never had that, and this is what they end up with. They could have got Lasada probably in the summer. Do you know what I mean? And that would have been a better idea to get him then. But no, crazy decision. My kind of, I thought they would be fine. I thought they'd finish second or first. That was my opinion of them. I think they're going to finish third. Like now, after this whole situation, I think this is going to really mess things up. You bring that guy back into that locker room, that changing room. Sorry, I think it's going to mess everything up. I really do, and I think you're going to wind a lot of people like Bertuccini, those sort of guys who aren't scared to say what they think. Like there's a lot of personalities in that team that will say what they think, and it just seems like it's a car crash waiting to happen, and Bernstock's going to take advantage.
Yeah, well, just briefly and quickly on the game itself, a bit of a freak game actually in lots of respects. I mean, I'm not gonna get into XG data kind of too much because it's quite unreliable unless you've got a big chunk of games to kind of extrapolate from. But on this game alone, Kortrijk's XG was well less than 1, and they scored 3 goals. So they basically scored with every opportunity they created in the game, which very rarely happens in any game, of course. Just a freak game for them particularly. They'll probably not do this again in years, if at all. Just kind of extraordinary. St Truden have been odd recently. I mean, obviously they get the Omdom weekend win over Beerschot, and you think, okay, job done. But there's been tension in that camp for a little while. I think Lamkelzee obviously has got a lot to do with this. Felix Mazu has banished him. Kicked him out of the squad to train on his own, wants him nowhere near the playing staff. Rapidly developing situation now that we've been alluding to, where it looks like Felix Mazu is on the verge of being sacked in favour of Hernan Losada. Lots of high-profile individuals have said no. I'm not going to touch that. As Ben was saying, why would you go in there in that situation? It's madness, particularly if you're some of these high-profile candidates who will get other offers over the summer anyway. So it's kind of easy to say no to that. Losada's keen to get back in, almost under any circumstances by the looks of it. I think the way he's probably looking at this is, well, if you get an offer from a pro league side, then regardless of the situation, then he has the confidence that he can keep them up. Big risk. Big risk in making the change at this point as well, and how it plays into things psychologically. Instead of efficiency being the key word this week, everybody, it's psychology. That's what it's all about this week. Yeah, I mean, really good coach, I think. Plays really attractive football. Most clubs would love to have a guy like Losada as their T1. Be very, very interesting to see how they do if he comes in over the next kind of 3 or 4 weeks, the remaining games of the playoffs, because he has a very different style to Mazu, and a style that isn't necessarily, as we were discussing a little earlier on this evening, before we recorded, the best style to kind of come into this situation off the back of. It's fine if you're starting with a kind of clean slate and you've got something to build from, but we're in the middle of, as you like to call it, a complete cage fight, which is really, really vicious, and in which personalities, either come to the fore and get you over the line, or people shrink. It's not an environment to play silky football at all, of any kind. So it's a really interesting choice. He does have 1B experience, obviously. His experience of getting a side promoted. He has experience of the Pro League before as well. So in some ways, whatever way you look at it, it's a really interesting appointment if they can reach that agreement. But yeah, to publicly confirm that you are actually talking to somebody else, which they've done this, everybody. St Truden have confirmed to us publicly and the rest of the world that they are actually talking to Losada. It seems even wilder to me, but it also tells me they're very confident that not only are they going to make the change regardless, but that they are going to get their man. It is harsh on Felix. I think he has been disappointing for a little while now. Something's happened inside that camp. It's probably around certainly Lamkelzee's got something to do with it, but there are other big personalities in there that obviously is affected as well. And for a while we felt like they more than had enough if they could keep these guys together, but it hasn't worked that way. Something's disrupted the camp. And for a coach like Mazu, who's such a good manager, to have kind of lost the players, which that's kind of what it looks like it's happened, or he's lost some of them, that's for sure. is really, really interesting, and I'm sure he'll be deeply disappointed about that, because I think he's been around long enough to know that this is only going to end one way now, for him, unfortunately. On the bright side, he will get other offers over the summer. I suspect there'll be quite a few clubs willing to look at him. Obviously, Mechelen haven't decided on whether they're going to appoint Fred van der Beest yet. They're being wise and waiting off on that at the moment. Because it looks like a certain Felix Mazu is going to become available, which, his phone will be ringing hard, you would imagine, should that axe fall. So that's something to watch out for over the next few days. But yeah, things just haven't felt right inside St Truden. Massive weekend for them. They cannot afford. You feel like they can't afford to lose to Cercle. That's it. They if they lose to Cercle, then I think it is the playoff final for them. And in that scenario, I don't think it matters who's in the dugout, because it's all about who can turn out on the day and handle the pressure of those two games. I don't think it matters if you're Henan Losada and you're capable of playing silky football. It's a big risk asking a coach like that to come in and fundamentally change the way that side plays, because it's a very different, it's a whole system change as well from the way that Mazu plays. So yeah, a lot of drama going down there, and the two key figures, obviously, Felix Mazu appears to have had a disagreement with Andre Pinto, the sporting director there. The club want to bring Lankable Z in from the cold to try and help them, but that's only going to work if he produces the goods and he settles down. And that also depends, as you were saying, Ben, is the rest of the team okay with that? Because if it's the management who are deciding this, the management upstairs, those guys have got to get that call right. If those players are going, we don't want him back, but it's the corporates upstairs in the boardroom who do, because they're nervous about going down, then this is going to be a bit of a bin fire, which Binky doesn't want to be in.
No, you just put it into my mind why they're going for Losada, Scott. It's because they want someone with one big experience for the playoff final who's played all these other teams. So there we go. Like we've kind of reached the bottom of it. But it's wild. It's wild. It seems to be becoming this thing in sport where it used to be that, like, you wouldn't fire someone this late in the season or something like that. But then, like, you've got it happening here. It's been happening in the NBA. My team, Denver Nuggets, just fired their basically equivalent of a sporting director and head coach with 3 games left before the playoffs. It's like, what? Like, chaos kind of reigns, I guess. But if you're Mazu and this doesn't go through, which I'd be tempted to say, okay, I'm going. Do you know what I mean? Like, why would I stay? Like, what am I doing? And I think for him, it's harm. His reputation has been taken a bit of a battering with this Charleroi, Anderlecht, and now this St Truden spell. And I think he needs to find a club that isn't an absolute mess. Do you know what I mean? Or like in a weird place like St Truden. It's not a mess. It's just run in a particular way that had like a couple of outlier seasons because of really, really good coaching. So I think this Bernd Hollerbach was a very, very good coach, and I think we all admitted he was boring, but he was very, very good at what he needed to do, and he punched above his weight with that team. Fink obviously then switched everything around, punched above his weight. We need to remember what St Truden were like before those guys. This is what they were. Do you know what I mean? They were fighting relegation. They were down and about in that thing. So I think the coaches really did make a massive difference there. I think Mazu's a good coach, but I think it's just that cycle of things has now finally come to an end of like, well, he can't get the most out of this as to what other coaches had been able to do. And they lost too many key players and that sort of stuff. So I think he does. If he finds another Belgian club, he needs one that's kind of sorted itself out. So like a Mechelen could be a slightly better option for him because he can kind of go in and it's not a complete mess off the pitch. They know, they kind of have their identity. They know what they're about. They know how they operate as a club and that sort of stuff. So it's not the worst idea, but I do think that job is Rankin's until he says he doesn't want it, is kind of my understanding from having absolutely no conversations with anyone and just making it up on the spot. But that's how I kind of view that. If Rankin wants it, I reckon he could take it again if he wants to go back. But yeah, it's thrown playoff 2 wide open. That result and then the decision that they're about to make, it is going to be really, really interesting. and it's perfect for Cercle. Like, I feel like Cercle played Kortrijk at the worst possible time a couple of weeks ago when Bernstorff was there. They're playing St. Jude at the best possible time, that's for sure. Let's get to the final game, which, two things to say. We'll start with the pre-match ridiculousness, and we can probably rant about that for a little bit, and then we'll talk a little bit about the game, but I don't think there's much to talk about with the game. It's obviously the Walloon Derby, which, if you haven't seen the story, Standard fans get into the away section and they start looking under their seats, and they're like, there's like devices under here. And when they pull them out, like, if you see the picture, like that could be anything. Like, you don't know that that's just a smoke bomb. That's basically Charleroi kind of ultras had got in and planted some surprise smoke bombs into the stands that could be remote detonated. Obviously, the police were like, right, everyone out. Like, let's all get out. Seats have been ripped up. So they all have to leave. Things are cleared. Fans go back in. They then smash up the toilets, like as you do. But it's just, it's a comical story, but it's also an absolutely terrifying story in the sense that people have been able to get access to a stand, plant devices in the stand, with the club having full knowledge of this going on. There's no way the club didn't know this was going on, or someone at the club didn't know this was going on. So the ultras will obviously get the blame, but the club deserves a massive fine, like a huge fine for this, because you just don't know what that actually is. Do you know what I mean? If you're able to plant electronically, like, distance kind of detonated devices under seats of fans, like, in this day and age, is mental, absolutely mental, like, so dangerous, so dangerous. And with the smoke and stuff as well, that even that's dangerous. You don't know, like, what medical conditions people have within that stand. Do you know what I mean? Like, yes, they're standard ultras, but that doesn't mean they're not asthmatic. Doesn't mean they don't have certain respiratory conditions that you could kill someone. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're talking extremes here, but it is extreme, and it's just mental, absolutely mental. And it's kind of, I know the fans have done weird things before. Like, what was it? The dead, like, animals they're throwing at each other last time and stuff like that. Like, this game is always a little bit mad, but this just takes the mick. Find them, like, do what you need to do to them, because this shouldn't happen. I feel bad for the Charleroi fans that aren't part of this. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're going to get punished for it as well. Probably there'll probably be a stadium ban for the ultras and stuff like that. But yeah, ridiculous behaviour. On the pitch, Charleroi do win 1-0. And if you go onto, like, the Foot Mob player ratings, every single standard player is just, like, orange rated. So it's not the green, not the reds. It's just orange, like, sixes. Like, that actually just sums up that team. Do you know what I mean? They're just, that is it. Like, that's their team. Whereas then you go on the other side and Zorgan's rated 8 out of, and he's like man of the match. So it's kind of like, there's the difference in a little bit of quality. But we spoke about, you mentioned about Ghent not being ready for the top 6. The other option would have been one of these two teams, and they would have been mullered in that top 6. I think teams would have taken them to the cleaners because they just don't have the quality that they need at this moment in time. But again, this is just, it's one of those results. It's just such a good result for Charleroi to win this one in terms of the race for that top spot. And yeah, Mechelen obviously have Leuven next, and then Charleroi have Westerlo next. So they could really kind of, if both sides can win that, then there's that kind of game between the two of them on, I think it's the 19th of April, that could really go a long way of deciding who's going to end up winning this kind of playoff. And I think on the face of things, on paper and stuff, like, these are the two best teams. Like, Charleroi probably have the better of the coaching staff. I think Rickman was a very, very good coach. And they do have a little bit of extra quality, and Mechelen have a little bit of extra quality. That the rest of this playoff group just don't have those kind of match winners in, like a Zorgan or a Scoofs or someone like that. So probably a good result for the playoffs, but the off-field stuff is just ridiculous.
Yeah, not too much to say about the game. You're dead right about that. The first goal was always going to be really important. Charleroi got it. Charleroi won it. You felt once they scored, then it was just going to be whether they held out. They probably weren't going to lose it after that, because Standard don't score too often, let alone one. Yeah, I mean, on the smoke bombs, interestingly, Mary Byatt the last few days has been saying we really need to get at the bottom of this. We're going to cooperate with the investigations. He did allude to the fact that the stadium is not as secure as they would like to be, and it is possible for people to get into that away enclosure. He said often that corner of the stadium is kind of open, So he was kind of hinting that, anybody can just kind of wander in and essentially do what they want, which may well be true. I mean, there's plenty of Belgian stadiums where that is actually the case. But, when you think about it, a number of people, not just a single individuals, got in there and spent a bit of time in there rigging these devices up under seats and things like that. So somebody inside that club has had knowledge of that. But there's a little bit of kind of skullduggery in all of this. For those of you who don't know, obviously, Charleroi banned a couple of the Ultras groups essentially indefinitely not too long ago because of some of their prior behaviour earlier in the season. And those Ultras groups went to court to get that ban overturned, which they actually won. So they were allowed back in. And I do wonder whether, is there something going on, and it's me posing the question here, is there a section of school of thought inside Charleroi that has allowed this to happen on a management level in order for them to go after the Ultras again, because this gives them the perfect pretext to do that. It wasn't the club didn't sanction them to come in and do this, but somebody has almost certainly allowed the access that they have been given. Otherwise, you probably would have seen this before, not just when they were playing Standard, who we know that they hate, of course, because of their rivalries. But yeah, I did wonder whether this was, is this one of those situations that has been engineered and assistance has been provided for their own devious ends? I don't know. Maybe that's the cynic in me, but I thought there's things in this narrative that suit that reading, I think, of that situation. We'll see what happens. Standard released quite a strong statement as well, saying they look forward to any investigation and cooperating with how they can make stadiums more secure. Probably worth highlighting as well, this is the perfect time to do it. If you aren't already aware, listeners, it looks like every single away enclosure is going to be netted from next season, which I think is a terrible step backwards. But we've got to this point where people can't not throw things, smoke bombs and flares and other things. So, we've got to a point where, you're going to be netted in, which is just a horrible experience. No matter what ground you're in, and we don't want to see that because it's a kind of step backwards to the football going experience on all sorts of levels. It's unfortunate that this particular fixture, which hasn't had much to write home about on the pitch, it's been everything that's been going on off it, all of the trouble around the fixtures and fan behaviour that seems to have been the story of the Walloon Derby for what feels like a few years now.
Yeah, the netting thing as well. Like, a lot of the time, the people throwing stuff are from the home section as well. So you're going to net them in as well. Do you know what I mean? It's not just away fans. And watching a football match through a net, like, sorry, nah, not for me. Unless I've paid to sit behind the goal, no, thank you. I want to be able to see the game. Speaking of off the field things involving clubs from this part of the world. We'll go to 1B now because someone's been sent back to 1A to the Pro League because they punched the teammate following a match. Scott, I feel like again this dropped today, and you couldn't make it up. We couldn't do yesterday because my son decided he didn't want to go to sleep until like 8:30, so I just couldn't get him down in time to do the podcast because I think he knew this news was about to break with the Mazu stuff, Lasada stuff. Like, he's like, no, Dad, you need to stay up. You can't podcast tonight. You need to go tomorrow because there's stuff coming. There's stuff coming. So, yeah, 1B, there's been plenty happening. I mean, we're getting into the business end as well. Like, on the pitch, there's so much excitement. Like, no one wants to get promoted, apparently, but some people just want to punch each other as well. So, fair enough. Maybe they were talking about the Walloon Derby and it got a bit heated.
Yeah, so what has been happening down there? Well, we're a couple of games out from the playoffs now. Patro drew one each with Molenbeek, whose nerves got the better of them this week. If they'd won, they would have been promoted, even though they haven't got their licence yet. But we'll come back to that. We'll see what happens there. Beveren's good form continues. They beat Eupen 3-0. Anderlecht Futures lost 2-0 to Lokeren, who are pushing hard to squeak into the playoffs. Club Next beat RFC Liège 2-1. Lommel beat Young Genk 2-0. Ral beat Frank Moran 2-1, which means that they keep the heat up on both Molenbeek and Zulte. Of course, they still hold a slim hope of automatic promotion. And Sarang and Zulte finished 0-0. So both Zulte and Molenbeek having some jitters at the moment. Molenbeek's still top, of course. They've got a 1 point lead on Zulte at the moment. Molenbeek still need that one win. So if they can get one win over the last 2 games, they will be promoted automatically. Zulte, probably one more win for them will probably be enough over the 2 games. Ral are just crossing their fingers that Zulte can drop some more points, because the final regular fixture of the season for Molenbeek and Zulte is between those two. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens there. Ral, I think, probably will consider themselves strong favourites, even if they do have to try and do it the hard way through the playoffs. They've been really good this season, so I don't think they'll be massively disappointed if they do have to do it that way, or try and do it that way. But yeah, a couple of big bits of news coming out of the CPL. Ben was talking about Sofiane Bendida punching a teammate and having his contract terminated. Not the first time he's got into fisticuffs this season. Yeah, he punched Akraf Lazim, wasn't it? Lazari. That's right, yeah. And the club acted very, very swiftly and terminated his contract. So he's off ski. Hopefully not to, well, maybe he is. Maybe he's gone to a boxing gym to take out his frustration and take up some anger management classes. We'll see, but who knows? Maybe there was a bit of history between those two as well. But yeah, post-match frustration led to it getting a little bit tasty in a way that you wouldn't want. The other big bit of news was around Liège, who may be about to squeak into the playoffs themselves. It's between them and Lokeren, I think, for that outstanding spot. Almost certainly going to be Beveren and Patro, possibly Ral. It's looking like Ral, and either Lokeren or Liège at the moment. But Liège received 5% investment from a German investment consortium, One Touch Football, over the last week. Which is really interesting. Their chief strategic officer, Martin Badoff's got a lot of CEO experience in the Bundesliga, former CEO at Nuremberg, Hanover and Kaiserslautern as well, and that 5% should allow Liège, which is generally quite a well-run club, very, very little debt there, virtually debt-free, to make some further infrastructure improvements. They have been trying to sell the club outright, of course, but only if they can retain operational control. But nobody's going to throw millions into a club or any serious money at all and not take operational control. So I think a minor stakeholding is probably best for all parties. But it is an interesting one, because as investments go, at least the individuals have some footballing experience, which is more than can be said for some other consortiums that have come along and tried to turn the tables in Belgium and were rumbled pretty quickly.
I hope the first act is to speed up the chip van at half time, because when we were there, that chip van took forever. I definitely missed most of the second half trying to get my flipping chips. But and all things are serious. We were speaking before the podcast. After visiting this, I'm probably the only person that's ever said this, but I really did like the club. I know it gets a joke as a place, but there's something about it, like the community feel, super friendly. Like they've kind of captured the historical element of the club really, really well as well. They kind of put together like a mini museum and stuff like that, because they're a club with some history, that's for sure, and you can feel it when you go there. But it does need a little bit of kind of upgrading. But like we turned up, ended up going and having a drink with the big wigs. And they'd invited all these people from the community there, kind of pre-match, having their lunch and dinner and stuff. And it was a very much a community vibe about it. And we were saying as well that when we got that they scout the really the lower reaches of Belgian football to bring players in, but then they also take players that have something to prove that they can get slightly cheaper and sell them on for a little bit of profit as well. So yeah, they're a very well run club in that regard, and definitely one worth visiting if you're a kind of football ground hopper. I think that stadium's definitely one to go to because they just put stuff in place. They've turned what is a ground that seems to be kind of on its last legs, but they've built like fan experience around what they've got at the moment there, and I think that's a credit to the club for sure, and definitely a place I'd always go and visit. I think when we go back, there's definitely a game I'd go watch. Yeah, it's interesting because obviously that Molenbeek Zolta game, if they lose their next game, that game just becomes massive for them, and
Yeah.
Real will just be licking their lips if they lose that because they could just be like, right, if one of you loses that last game, we're coming.
Yeah.
But I think if Zolta win the next game, I presume they'd probably be up as well because I'm guessing it'd go on games one, and then for Real they just wouldn't be able to catch them, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think Real playoffs they'd be favourites, but I've got a sneaky Beveren kind of hunch about the form they're on. They are really flying. I think when I just look now, they've only lost one game in the last since beginning of
Yeah.
December,
Yeah.
which was Zortavagen. They lost then, and then they've been on a winning kind of unbeaten run, and then lost to Molenbeek. So it's like the two teams at the top of the league beating
They've
everyone else.
actually they've actually been playing really well. I mean, the times that I've seen them this season, they've been good to watch. They've generally impressed. The issue with Brentford is they just don't score enough goals. You would imagine if they get into a situation in the playoffs where they can maintain that form, but they start to take those chances, then I think it would be hard to see past them because they've probably got the most quality and depth in that squad. It's just whether they take their chances. But yeah, they're in good form, and I think they'll fancy their chances. Yeah, just be interesting to see whether Raul can confound the maths at the moment and get automatic promotion because there's a lot of good things going on inside that club. The new stadium's almost finished, and what an amazing story that would be to have that stadium finished and for it to become a Pro League stadium, which it may, yeah, even if it's through the playoffs. That'd be great. It'd be nice to have a spanking new stadium to visit in the top flight as well, and it's the first new stadium in Belgium, I think, since the Planet Group Arena was completed 12, 13 years ago now as well. So and it's looking like a nice little ground. That I look forward to visiting it when it's finished.
Absolutely, yeah. Like you said, that might be a 1A visit, might be a 1B visit, but either way, they'll go into next season if they're still in 1B, feeling good about themselves. Especially with Beerscott coming down, they'll feel like, yeah, that's fine. Don't worry about them. There's other teams, but yeah, no, looking forward to all that. 2 games left to go. It's going to be tense. It's going to be tense. It's going to be good. I think that probably about does it for this weekend. This weekend. Who knows what we're talking? Apologies, as we've already said, that this is coming out a little bit later than usual. But yeah, I think we gave our explanations, and we got quite lucky with some of the news that dropped, so it gave us even more to talk about. And because we could have been talking about Felice Mazu, and then it completely changed within a week. But yeah, as always, after a very long time, Scott, it's been great to be back. It's been great to be chatting all things Belgian football with you.
It has indeed. It has indeed. Have a great week, whatever you're up to, everybody. And we will be back even quicker than we normally are by the time you listen to this.
Exactly. The wait isn't as long, and I'm sure we're going to have plenty to talk about next week. In the meantime, if you like what we do, please do leave us a review on your podcast app of choice. Or if you really, really like what we do, you can donate to us at buymeacoffee.com. If you've got any questions for us off the back of this, feel free to drop them to us on the socials, or you can even, I think you can do it on the podcast thing as well. I know you can do it on Spotify. Not sure about Apple, but if there is a feature there, feel free to do it. We'd be happy to answer anything that you have. We're running out of kind of time for this season. We're getting near to the business end. Plenty to talk about still, though, that's for sure. Thanks, as always, for listening, and we'll speak to you very, very soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.